Hello everyone. We are about to go over section 2.4 for Math 20 Pre-Algebra. Okay, in section 2.4 we will be covering multiplying and dividing integers. Okay, now as you see here we have three answers provided for us. 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times 3 is 9. Notice that all of our lead numbers here are 3, and they're multiplying by numbers in descending order. We have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now if you notice here with our answers, when we start off with 3 times 5 is 15, when this number goes down by 1, this number goes down by 3. This number goes down by 1, this number goes down by 3. Now we can see here plainly that 3 times 2 is 6. However, we could look here at this pattern. Since every time it goes down by 1, we subtract 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. Okay, now we can use the same pattern here. It goes down by 1, so this should be 3. And as we know, 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, next thing here, this goes down by 1. 3 times 0 is 0. And also 3 minus 3 is 0. So that's the pattern here, and we use the pattern to complete the table, also using the multiplication. Now we come down here to the second table. It says now, if you notice, the second table basically does as the first table. We still have lead numbers of 3, and each one of these numbers are going down by 1. So in theory, this should go down, it should be subtracted by 3 as well, like the other examples were. So 0 minus 3, this should give us negative 3. Now we went down another one, so this should give us negative 6. And going down another one, this should give us negative 9. Now when we multiply this, 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, and 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Now, let's take a look at these definitions. A positive integer multiplied by a positive integer results in a positive integer. A positive integer multiplied by a negative integer results in a negative integer. Since 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, it is reasonable to assume that negative 3 times 3 also equals negative 9. Now, following our pattern again, we can make assumptions about this pattern here as well. If you notice, these lead numbers are negative 3, and these numbers here go down by 1. So we had negative 3 times 3, which is negative 9, and negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Negative 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, and negative 3 times 0 is 0. Now, unlike the first example we did when we were subtracting 3 as we went along, we're actually adding 3 here, because negative 9 plus 3 is negative 6, negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3, and negative 3 plus 3 is 0. Now we extend the pattern. Now if you notice, we had negative 3 times negative 1, which is positive 3. A negative times a negative is positive. And then we have negative 3 times negative 2, which is a positive 6. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Because remember, a negative times a negative is positive. Now as you notice here, as the numbers go down here, our numbers go up here. And the pattern is we're adding 3 to each value. Now we come to another definition. A negative integer multiplied by a negative integer results in a positive integer. We can summarize our results as follows. Product or quotient of two numbers with like signs. We have a positive times a positive, or a positive divided by a positive. That gives us a positive integer. A negative times a negative, or a negative divided by a negative, also gives us a positive integer. Now we have products or quotients of two numbers with different signs. We have a positive times a negative, or a positive divided by a negative. That gives us a negative integer. Also here we have a negative times a positive or a negative divided by a negative, and that also gives us a negative integer. Now let's try these examples. Okay, we want to multiply. We have a negative times a positive, so we automatically know that our final answer is going to be negative. 5 times 2 is 10. So our answer here is negative 10. Now look at number 2. Based upon the definition that we had earlier, this is a negative times a negative, so we know this is going to result in a positive answer. So we have negative 8 times negative 11, which should give us a positive 88. Now we go to number 3. Now we have the reverse. We have the positive first times the negative. But as we did in number 1, whenever you have a positive number times a negative number, your answer is still going to be negative. 3 times negative 4 is a negative 12. Now we move on to number 4. Now number 4 has 0 times a negative number. 0 times any negative number is just 0. Now we go to number 5. We have a negative 12 divided by a positive 3. Just like with multiplication, a negative divided by a positive is negative. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So our answer here is negative 4. Now number 6. We have a negative divided by a negative, which will result in a positive. 80 divided by 10 will give us positive 8. Now we look at problem number 7. We have a positive divided by a negative. Now a positive divided by a negative is going to give us a negative. 42 divided by 7 is 6. So our answer here is negative 6. Now number 8. We have a negative 16 divided by a negative 2. A negative divided by a negative is positive, and 16 divided by 2 is 8. Now I want you to take a look at the next examples. We're multiplying several integers. Now let's take a look here. We have a positive 8 times a negative 6. Positive 8 times a negative 6 we know will give us a negative answer. 8 times negative 6 is negative 48. But then we bring down our negative 2. Negative 48, oh, for some reason this is acting up a little bit. So I guess we will stop this video here, and I will create another video to take care of this video here. Okay, we're back. Now 8 times negative 6, as we stated before, is negative 48. And we bring down our negative 2. A negative times a negative is positive, so we know our final answer is going to be positive. 48 times 2 is 96. Now we go on to problem number 2. Negative 9 times negative 2 will give us a positive 18. And we bring down our negative 1. Positive 18 times negative 1 will give us a negative answer, and 18 times negative 1 will give us a negative 18. Now we come to number 3. Remember, the rules stay the same. We have here negative 3 times negative 4, which gives us a positive 12. And we bring down our negative 5 and our negative 1. 12 times negative 5, a positive times a negative, is negative. So it'll be negative 60 times negative 1. A negative times a negative will give us a positive, which will give us positive 60. Now we look at number 4. You take a look at number 4. We have negative 2 times positive 5, which is a negative 10. And we bring down our negative 3 and also our negative 2. Negative 10 times negative 3 is a positive 30 times negative 2. Positive 30 times a negative 2 is a negative 60. And we're done with that problem. Now we have this question here. Did you notice any patterns when multiplying sine numbers? What are they? Now what you could do your guessing, and you could come and talk to me the next class period and we will go over what the patterns are. Now we look down here at the next example. This time we're dealing with division. We have number 1, 0 divided by a negative 7. 0 divided by a negative number will still just give you 0. And remember, 0 is not positive or negative. Now we come to number 2. Negative 6 divided by 0. Any number except 0 divided by 0 is undefined. Now that completes those two problems. Now we look at this next question. It says, what are the rules for dividing with 0? Are there any ways that you can help yourself remember these rules? Now what I want you to do is attempt this on your own, and then when you come to class, the next class period, we can discuss it. Now we need to go down to problem number 1 under section B, where we're going to evaluate negative 2 to the 4th power. Now what this exponent means is that we're going to take negative 2 in parentheses, multiply it by itself 4 times. So we will have negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Now negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4 times negative 2 times negative 2. Now we have 4 times negative 2, which would give us negative 8 times negative 2. A negative times a negative is positive, so our final answer here is positive 16. Okay, now we look at number 2. Now number 2 looks similar to number 1, however they are very, very different. This has a parenthesis, this does not. So this is what we would do. First of all, we would write the negative sign. And then we would take these 2's and multiply them. We would put them in a parenthesis to show that this negative sign is separated from the actual number 2. Now we bring down our negative sign and we multiply. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So our final answer is negative 16. If you notice, with this being in parentheses taken to the 4th power, it gives us a positive answer. This being outside parentheses and having a negative in front gives us a negative answer. You have to remember that. Okay, now for number 3. We have parentheses negative 3 to the 3rd power. So we'll write negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9 times negative 3. Positive 9 times negative 3 is a negative 27. Okay, number 4. We have a negative on the outside and 3 to the 3rd power, no parenthesis. So we will write that negative. We'll put 3 in a parenthesis, multiply by itself 3 times. So we will have, we'll bring down our negative. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. So our final answer here is negative 27. Both of these answers are the same. Now, this question down here, what is the difference between these examples? I want you to try it on your own, and we will talk about that in class.